Kadosh, Boker Or, Daf Yomi Masechet Shevuot Daf Lamedaled Amud Aleph 34a1. We're talking about right now in the Gemara where we're speaking about Rabbi Shimon. If you remember, we were speaking about the fourth limud was Rabbi Shimon comes and he's mechayev, right? Also by Shevuot Sheker, in Shevuot Edut, obviously, and also Shevuot Sheker by Pikadon. And we said, Ma lehala neno medaber ala b'tviat mamon. Just like over there, we're only talking about Tviat Mamon. So to here, we're only talking about, right, Tviat Mamon. And it's a Kavachomer. Ma pikadon she'asa bo nashim kanashim krovim kerechokim, psulim ksherim, v'chayav al kol echad ve'achat, in front of a bedin, not in front of a bedin, eno medaber Tviat Mamon, right? So he says, we're not going to make women like men, krovim kerechokim, psulim ksherim, ve'eno chayav ela achad bifnei betin, eno din shelo yeh medaber b'tviat mamon. Obviously, we're talking about Tviat Mamon. Right, Lamedaled Amudaled, right? So he says, yes, Lamedaled. So he says, Ma lepikadon sheken lo asa bo mushba kenishba umezid keshogeg, tomar beedut sheken asa ba mushba kenishba umezid keshogeg. So now the Gemara is going to ask a question on Shitat Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon wanted to come and he wanted to make a kal vachomer. Remember that whenever you make a kal vachomer, there's a danger. And the danger of a kal vachomer is that I could always ask against the kal vachomer. And once you find the chumrah the other way around, you don't say a kal vachomer anymore. So he comes and he asks, 1 second, pikadon, they didn't do the mushba like a nishba, and they didn't make a mezid like a shogeg, right? What does that mean? So he comes and he says here like this, which means they never made, according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon, nifkad is chayav lavi hasham shvuat pikadon b'sheker rak im aval al shvuat b'shogeg, not if he did it b'mezid. Okay, here, so therefore, if by Pikadon they didn't do the mushba like the nishba, which means that mushba mipi acharim ki nishba mipi atzmo, and they didn't make the mezid like the shogeg, that if he was over b'mezid, it's not the same thing if he was over b'shogeg. That means only if he's actually b'shogeg that he went against it, he's going to be chayav a korban. Okay, not if he did it b'mezid. So you're going to tell me then b'shvuat ha'edut sheken asa b'mushba ki nishba umezid keshogeg? I mean, we made a kal vachomer. Kal vachomer Shevuot Edut from Shevuot Pikadon. We're going to go the other way around. Shevuot Edut is yoter chamur mi Shevuot Pikadon. Right? Why? Because they made mushba kinishba mezid keshogeg. So the Gemara answers, Talmud Lomar comes to teach you, techeta ligzera shava. We're making gzera shava. Why? It says by Shevuot Edut v'nefesh ki techeta, and it says over there by Shevuot Pikadon nefesh ki techeta. Male halan, just like over there, eno medaber ala b'tviat mamon, we're talking about tviat mamon. So to here, we're talking about Shevuot Edut, we're talking about tviat mamon. So matkifla Rabba bar Ula, 1 second. Yeah? So says Rabba bar Ula, right? Says 1 second. Says as Ula. O. When we come and we speak about the entire concept of O. Yeah? We're talking about Shevuot bitui, right? He comes and he says, right? It's going to teach you the exact opposite. Shehen oim, v'yesh imahen shavua, right? Ve'en imahen kohen, umdabrim shelo b'tviat mamon. Which means, why is it that Rabbi Eliezer is going to make a hekesh, to be makish between Shevuot Pikadon and Shevuot Edut, only to do it tviat mamon, right? You could actually learn from Shevuot bitui to do with Shevuot Edut that it's talking about even if it's not mamon. So he comes and he says, mistabra mi Pikadon havel elmelach. It's much more mistaber to learn from Pikadon, because it's written techeta, meaning we're making it, right? It's used the same language. Techeta. So he says, Adraba, from Bitu you should have learned it, but it's written chatat. So he says, no. Mistabram pikadon avel melav sheken chet b'mezid tave v'kafre v'avre. He says, whenever you have the concept of chet b'mezid, tave v'kafre, and then avre, right? What does that mean? If you come and you pay attention, look in the footnote. The footnote you have, right? These are words. Chet, right? What is chet? Chet b'mezid, right? The word techeta. B'mezid. If somebody's going to swear Shevuot Edut, Shevuot Pikadon, and Sheva b'mezid, he's going to be chayav a korban. But Shevuot bitui, you're not chayav a korban. Taveh v'kafre is one thing, right? Which is basically Shevuot Edut and Shevuot Pikadon. They're both going to be al yidei tviyah and kfirah. Right? He says Shevuot bitui has nothing to do with that. Ve'avre, Shevuot Edut and Shevuot Pikadon are going to be Shevuot, right, on something that happened on the past, on the avar, and not on something which is going to be on the future. Shevuot pitui is going to be on the future. So one more time. I have a choice to decide where to learn the Shevuot Edut. I'm going to always compare it to Shevuot Pikadon. And I'm not going to compare it to Shevuot Bitui. Shevuot Bitui was, if you remember, a person that comes and he swears about a certain thing. But that the Ikar was going to be in the future, right? Ala atid, lo la'avar. So we come and we say Shevuot Edut and Shevuot Pikadon are more domeh because of chet, because of the word techeta. Because if you're going to be chayav a korban afilu be mezid, right? Because if you remember in Shevuot Bitui, if a person came and he swore falsely be mezid, he's not chayav a korban, right? Because it's only the shogeg that he's going to be chayav a korban. Here in Shevuot Edut and Shevuot Pikadon, it's even going to be mezid. Taveh ve'kafre means that it's dafka mish tovea otcha Shevuah. Shevuot Bitui has nothing to do with somebody that's tovea otcha Shevuah, right? Even without a person just comes swears that's Shevuot Bitui. Shevuot Edut is only if mishu tovea otcha lishava, or Shevuot Pikadon is mishu tovea otcha la'asot Shevuah. And the last one is going to be avre. Ma? There's three different cases. Shevuot Bitui, Shevuot Pikadon. No. Shevuot Bitui is stam a person comes and he makes a Shevuah. Right? What? No, not even without bedin. Shevuot Bitui, no. Shevuot Edut, yes. Right? Shevuot Pikadon, there's also cases in bedin. Right? But Shevuot Bitui is the person that's coming making a Shevuah. Shevuot Edut has to do with testimony. Shevuot Pikadon, I don't have your collateral. Right? You didn't leave it by me. There are three different cases. But Shevuot Edut and Shevuot Pikadon are much more similar. Why are they much more similar? Because we already said the Gezerah Shava, Techeta, even if you're going to be doing a Mezid, you're going to be Chayav. If Dafka Mish Tovea Otcha Shevuah, right? Meaning that Shevuot Pikadon, if nobody's Tovea and you just stop make a Shevuah, it's nothing. The same thing with Shevuot Edut. You remember we said you had to be, somebody's running after you to make you do a Shevuah, right? Somebody's Tovea the Shevuah, and then you're Kofer. And the last one is going to be Al-Avar. Shevuot Edut and Shevuot Pikadon is Al-Avar. And Shevuot Bitui is going to be on the future. So the Gemara asks, 1 second, Adraba, mi Bitui avel melaf. I would have learned from Shevuot Bitui. Why? Sheken Chatat, Sheyarda, Lachomesh. Mazot omeret. Shevuot Edut, right, or Shevuot Bitui is going to be Chayav Chatat, and Shevuot Pikadon is Chayav Nasham. One more time, a person came and he swore falsely. What does he bring? What korban does he bring? Shevuot Edut, right, is korban olev yored. Shevuot Bitui, also, it's going to be a chatat, right? Shevuot Pikadon is a sham. So if I'm going to compare Shevuot Edut to something, I should compare it to Shevuot Bitui because of the korban. Number two, I didn't get to Yarda now. Now it's Yarda, right? The first one is chatat. I explained the chatat. Meaning, Bitui and Edut, c'est la même chose לגבי הקורבן. זה אותו קורבן. Shevuot Pikadon is Asham. It's a different korban. Second one is what? Yarda. What is it now? Olev yored. The korban on Shevuot Edut and Bitui is korban olev yored. It's a chatat, but it's also olev yored. Olev yored means according to what type of stature you have in society, whether you're rich, so you're going to bring a behema. If you're poor, going to bring the birds. If you're poor, right? Which one? Yes, obviously you swore falsely. Yes, all these cases, you swore falsely. If you didn't swear falsely, for sure you don't bring a korban. The last one is going to be Shevuot Edut and Bitui, right? There's no such thing as Tosefet Chomesh. Pikadon, you have to add a Chomesh because of a Knas. So for example, let's say right now you came and you swore falsely. Shevuot Bitui. So fine, you have to bring a korban. Gamarnu. Right? You did a Shevuot Edut. You swore falsely, you didn't know testimony. You bring a korban. Gamarnu. Shevuot Pikadon, right? You have to add a chomesh to pay back as a knas. Meaning, let's say the value of the Pikadon, this was a book. The value of this book is $10. I gave you this book, and now because of this, it was that you have to add a chomesh. So now you're going to have to give. You have to pay a knas. The knas is chomesh, not by Shevuot Edut and not by Shevuot Bitui. So says the Gemara, these three things is a comparison between Shevuot Shevuot Bitui and Shevuot Edut. Yeah? One more time. How many comparisons were there between Shevuot Edut and Shevuot Pikadon? שבועת העדות ושבועת הפיקדון.
לא יודע. לא יודע מה. בסוף מקודם אמרנו, מה זה היה שתי המילים האלה שהשתמשת בהם מקודם, מה זה היה?
יוהן, you have it written or not? אין לך את זה כתוב?
חטא, משהו כזה, והיה עוד משהו. היו שני דברים, לא זוכר, מחילה.
4 דברים. says the Gemara one more time. חטא במזיד, תווה וכפרה ועברה. חטא זה הגזרה שווה, תחתה, במזיד, right? ולא בשוגג, בגלל לגבי שבועת ביטוי, בשוגג, במזיד you're not going to bring a קורבן, only בשוגג. תווה וכפרה, מישהו צריך לתבוע אותך את השבועה, ואתה כופר בשבועה, לגבי שבועת ביטוי זה לא קשור לתביעה וכפירה, ולגבי עבר ועתיד. עבר, 4. חטא, מזיד, תווה וכפרה, עברה. 4 דברים. Right? Here...
מה ההבדל בחטא למזיד הרב?
חטא זה גזירה שווה, תחתה. מזיד, אתה עושה את זה במזיד או בשוגג.
אז חטא זה טעות? בשוגג?
No, זה המילה. תחתה. זה המילה. Yeah? So therefore you have 4 things. Here the Gemara says, you have 3 things. You've got chatat, right? Yarda, and chomesh. So says the Gemara, hanach nefishan. Why am I going to compare Shevuat HaPikadon to Shevuat HaEdut instead of Shevuat HaPikadon, Shevuat HaEdut to Shevuat Bitui? Because it's more. I've got 4 comparisons instead of 3. Okay? Fine. Let's go back. The Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva says, Vayachi Yasham La'achat Me'ele. Yesh Me'ele Shu Chayav, Yesh Me'ele, right, Shu Patur. HaKeitzad. Right? What exactly is the case now? Tivao mamon, right? If you're going to ask for money, you're going to be chayav. Tivao davar acher, you're going to be patur. So says the Gemara, right? Which means that by the Shevuat HaEdut, right? When it says vayach yesham me'ele, it has to be Shevuat HaEdut b'sheker, which has to be with mamon. So Yikamni says, right? If it's going to be davar acher, it should be patur. So says the Gemara, epuchana. Right? Why don't you just say the exact opposite? Say if it's going to be tavo dvar acher, it's going to be chayav. Tavo mamon, you're going to be patur. So Rabbi Akiva o ain, right? He says the Rabbi Eliezer samich. What does that mean? Rabbi Akiva is also going to be somech on the gzera shava of o, right? And therefore he's coming to learn that it has to be also something which is mamon, right? Also that has to have mamash mamon. To tell you that tviyat mamon, right? You're going to become chayav. Anything else, you're going to be patur. So my benayhu ben Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. So what's the difference then between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva? Ika benayhu, which one? מאה אחת מאלה. זאת אומרת, יש לפעמים שאתה תהיה חייב, יש לפעמים שאתה תהיה פטור. זה מאלה. אז זה מה שהוא אומר. He's deciding that it's going to be דווקא ממון, you're going to be חייב, and something else you're going to be פטור. So yes, why don't you say the opposite? He says, no, he learns it from a גזירה שווה. And therefore, since he learns a gzera shava, it has to be davka davar shel mamon. So the Gemara asks, if you're learning it that way, so what's the avdel then between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva? Kemamon. So the Gemara is going to ask, what's the difference then between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva then? So he comes and he says like this. He says, Ika benayhu, the difference between them is mashbia ede karka. When they come and they're going to be swearing on karka. According to Rabbi Eliezer, you're going to be chayav a korban, right, on karka. So he says, because basically, if somebody's going to steal a field from his friend and then shatfu nar, he could just say aresh shelcha lefanecha. So therefore, he says there's a machloka between Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer, that he says chayav gazan to give him another field, because according to Rabbi Eliezer, he says veshivta gazela shegazal, right, and which is written in Shevuot HaPikadon is also in karka, right. So therefore, it's also going to be in such a case, right. And according to Rabbi Akiva, he's maskim to Rabbi Eliezer to do a Shevuot HaPikadon bekarkaot like metaltalim. Right? And therefore, because he's learning it, but to do the Shevuat HaEdut, he's learning me'ele, that karka is something else. Meaning, even though karka, technically, you could also say karka is mamon. He says no. He says karka is something else. It's not considered mamon. It has to be dafka, something which is metaltali, right? Which is not going to be karka. Okay, so says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that he says over there, mashbia ede karka, afilu Rabbi Eliezer peturim. That you're going to be mashbia ede karka, even according to Rabbi Eliezer, you're going to be patur. So then what's the shita then between, what's the difference between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva? If you're going to tell me that there's no difference between karka and the taltalin, so what's the difference between the shita of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva? So he says, Ika benau, the difference between them is going to be a deknas. What does that mean? Imagine right now, you know that you meaning there's two people, that they know that somebody is obligated to pay a knas to their friend. And they kafru b'sheker. According to Eliezer, they're going to be chayavim a korban. He says over here, because again, they're talking about even in a case of knas. So he says, but according to Rabbi Akiva, right, he comes and he says, you're going to be patur. Because according to him, he's learning that Shevuot Pikadon was said by a knas, which is going to be mamon gamur. But to do a Shevuot Edut, right, it's not going to be by knas. So you're going to be patur. So he says, Rabbi Yosef Gilileh comes and he says, Vehu ed or ra'a o yada, ve'edut mitkayem b'riyah b'lo yediah v'yediah b'lo riyah k'tu medaber. You remember we already spoke about this, that we explained that according to Rabbi Yosef Gilileh, when it says Vehu ed or ra'a o yada, we are talking about edut, which is going to be mitkayem with riyah without yediah, or yediah without riyah. You remember what the case was? Riyah below yediah or yediah without riyah? We said that riyah was, for example, the hush money that we spoke about on the camera. You remember? I come and I see you give $100, but I don't know what it was for. And then afterwards they come and they say, by the way, what I gave him was a halva. But at the time I didn't know about it. Right? Or the yediah bili riyah, that I come and I admit in front of two witnesses that I borrowed money from you. So there's a yediah, but there was no riyah. I didn't see it. So that was the case of eduta mitkayem beriyah belo yediah, or yediah belo riyah ketu medaber. So Elmaleh Rav Papa Abaye says Rav Papa Abaye leima Rabbi Yosef Gilileh le Rabbi Yacha. Why don't they say that Rabbi Yosef Gilileh does not hold of Rabbi Yacha? Why? The Tanya Bezurim to the right. Rabbi Yacha says, Gamal ha'ocher ben agmalim v'nimtza gamal harug betzido. If you have a gamal which is kicking around, and all of a sudden you see another gamal which is dead beside it, so biyadua sheze arago, right? We know that this was the one that killed, and therefore he has to pay, right? Now why? The it led Rabbi Yacha. So now if you're going to tell me that he holds Rabbi Yacha, bedinei nefashon mishkachala. So then you could also find it in a case of Dinei nefashot, like Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach. The Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach, what did he say? Ere b'nei chamayim lo raiti echad sheratz achar chavero lechurba, ורצתי אחריו מצאתי צלב בידו ודם מטפטף והרוג מפרפר. אמרתי לו, רשע, מי הרגול הזה? או אני או אתה. אבל מה אעשה? שאין דמך מסור בידי. שהרי אמרה התורה, על פי שניים עדים ושלושה עדים, ממה אתה מת? אלא מקום ייפרע ממך. אמרו, they said, לא זזו משם, עד שנשכו נחש ומת. An incredible story. Right? Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach sees somebody running after somebody. And he's got a sword in his hand. Remember, nowadays it's a gun. In the olden days, it used to be a sword. Right? So what happens? He runs inside the khurba after the guy, and he runs after him. And all of a sudden, he sees that the sword is full of blood. And he sees the guy on the floor dying. He's miparper. He's, how do you call it? He's moving around. He's lost, right? So what happens? He comes and he tells him. He says, Rasha, who killed him? It's either me or you. There's nobody else here, right? You've got the sword in your hand. He said, but what can I do? I can't do anything to you. Why can't I do anything to you? Because at the end of the day, your blood is not given into my hands because you need two edim. And here, you didn't have two edim. Not only didn't have two edim because at the end of the day, he was only one ed, but also he didn't actually see the action. He only came in after he stabbed him to death. So therefore, he said, however, though, he came and he gave him a curse. He says, Amakomi paramimcha. Right? He says that even though I cannot come and we cannot kill you, but Hashem should exact retribution from him. Hamakomi paramimcha. What happened? A Nachash came and killed the guy on the spot. They didn't move. Yeah. וזה לא קשור, יכול לקרוא אחרי 20 שנה, מה זה קשור? פה מדובר על מיד. Yeah? So he comes and he says, so therefore obviously, right, that if Papa comes and he tells the Baye, so obviously he comes and he tells them, obviously does not hold of Rabbi Yacha. Because here you have this case, right, that they're going to be chayav, even though you didn't see that in Samaria. So he says, because if he held a Rav Acha, so then also you can find that in the Nefashot. Right? So he comes and he says, even if you're going to tell me he does hold a Rabbi Yacha, Bishlama Yediya Beli Reya, Mashkach Allah, you could find Yediya without Reya. Ela riyah belo yidiyah. But how can you find riyah without yidiyah? So he says, Milo bay meida. You don't need to know. He says, 1 second. How do you have edut riyah without yidiyah? Right? You cannot say that by the din nefashot, because when it says vehu ed or ra or yada, we're talking about that it's mitkayemet b'riyah b'lo yidiyah or yidiyah b'lo riyah. That could only happen by tviyat mamon. Right? That could only happen by mamon. It cannot happen by din nefashot. Right? Because to do with mamonot, yeah, you could have yidiyah without, right? You could have riyah without yidiyah, but how do you have it, right? Without in din nefashot. You come and you saw somebody killed, but if you don't know all the details, maybe you killed a trefa, maybe you killed a goy. If you don't know all the details, right, it doesn't help. So for this only happens in what? In mamon. Shemamina, you see from here, you're going to be patur if he's going to be mashpia de knas. The isal kadaita, but if you're going to tell me now you're going to be chayav, nihidi yediyah belo riyash kechanna. Even though we found edut knas by yediyah without riyah belo yediyah, right? How do you find it? So he says, Milo by meida nochrit baal or bat Yisrael baal, betula baal, right? Or beula baal, meaning like this. When we're talking about a case of a knas, right? What was the case of knas? Or pitui or ones, right? Somebody came and he was mifateh anara, or huanas nara. He has to give a knas. How much is the knas? 50 shekalim. So there, don't you have to know whether he actually was Ba'ala Yudia or Anochrit, or whether it was a Betula or a Beula? If he was Ba'ala Beula, he doesn't have to pay anything. Right? It's only if he was Ba'al, right, a Betula. So therefore, obviously, he has to know. So therefore, again, we cannot come and say that it's going to be Mitkayem Edut Knas, right, with Riyah, without Yidiyah, because again, you need the Yidiyah. There has to be some form of a Yidiyah, right, in order to know what's going on. So Yatev Rav Amnuna Kamed Rav Yehuda. So sits Rav Amnuna was sitting in front of Rav Yehuda. Yatev Rav Yehuda Kamibaile. So he asked a question. Mane miniticha bifne ploni o ploni. If somebody comes and he lends out a mane in front of two people, right? Ploni ploni. Lamedala damubet. Vedim roim oto bachutz. So now they didn't know, they couldn't recognize the person that's there. Now they come and they say, yeah, he's going to be chayav. Is Bemeti chayav to pay back or not? Right? Now, why? They weren't able to be makir the nitba. Right? That means the nitba does not know that they're there. The edim are looking, but they're looking through a window. Yeah? What's halacha? So Elmaleh Rav Amnuna, yeah, everyone knows the case. Basically, there's witnesses, but the guy doesn't know there's witnesses. Yeah? So for example, in here, right? Let's say, for example, there's a trap, I don't know what, and they're watching, but we don't know that they're watching. So there's two witnesses, but they didn't know. The nitba does not know. So Elmaleh Rav Amnuna says Rav Amnuna, the halama twain. What is he twain? Amar, he comes and he says, Lo hayu devarim me'olam, la adam. La adam means lo hayu devarim me'olam. It never happened. So he became uchzak kafran. So obviously he's uchzak. He has a chazakah that he's kafran, that he's going against them. Iyamar in shakli v'didi shakli. Right? So kiatu edim mayavi. He says, 1 second, but what happens if he did say that what? I did take it, but it's mine. So when you have edim, what do I care then? One more time. Right now we're in the room. I didn't know that the two people are watching. And all of a sudden we come and we start doing a business. There's something that goes on, right? We take something or whatever it is. Now he comes and he says, I lent him the money. He goes, what are you talking about? Mapitom. Yeah. You lent him the money. You go back and forth. Now the guy comes and he brings two witnesses. Now he didn't know, right? That there was two witnesses over there. Like, he didn't know. So now what happens is, right, is that what happens now is that what did the guy say? If the guy said it never happened, so obviously he's a kafran. Why? Two witnesses come and they say it did happen. So what are you talking about that it never happened? But what happens if he said, no, I did take it, but it was mine? Did I take money from you? Of course, it wasn't alva. It was my money, right? You gave me back my money, or it was my money that was taken back from you. So therefore, what does help me the edim? The edim are watching from the outside. They're only looking. but they don't have idea.
So
They don't know without understanding. So if they see an action without understanding, okay, you just prove me right. You're right. I took it. It's mine. How are Adim going to disprove me? They can't disprove me. So Elmaleh comes and he says, Hamnuna at ul. Yeah, you could come into the Bet HaMidrash. Right? Why? Because you're machkim rabcha. So come. Fine. So another case, which is very similar. Somebody comes and tells his friend, Mane maniti lecha, betzad amud zeh. Right? I give you a halva beside this pole. Elmaleh, he says, Lo avarti betzad amud zeh. I never passed by. They came and they testified, yes, you did. Right? That he actually once came and he actually did urinated by there. Elmaleh says that he's a kafran. He's a kafran. Why? He said that he never passed by that wall, and he did. So Matkif Rav Nachman asks, Haidina Parsahu. This is a Psaktin Parsi. Says, why? Mi kamar meolam. Right? He never said never pass there. He said, Be'esek ze kamale. He said to do with this. The guy, read the Gemara again. Lo avarti betzad amud ze. I didn't pass by this amud. He didn't say meolam. Did I go by that amud? Yes, I went by that amud. So then you're going to bring me witnesses that he went and he was mashtin liyad amud. Chazak baruch. What is that? What does that prove? It didn't prove anything. Ika de'amni, another version of the story. Yeah, he says, Here he did say me'olam. So nafku besad d'ishti ma'im mitzad v'muzeh, kafran. Here he did say zuchza kafran. Amale Rav Nachman, says Rav to Rav Nachman, kol milta deloram yale di'inche avidla velavadate. Anything which a person doesn't pay attention, he's not obligated for it. Meaning, he doesn't have to remember. Meaning, I'm going to say, what are you talking about? Mordechai, you didn't go to that place. You did go. Right? This thing. Okay. It could be. Because you're not paying attention. Right? It wasn't something that you're obligated to remember. Right? You're not obligated to remember that you went to every single place. I'm going to ask you, did you ever go to this certain place? You're going to say, I don't think so. All of a sudden, I come, you did that. Maybe you're right. Okay, it could be. So whether or not what you're a kafran? No, sometimes you just don't pay attention. Right? There wasn't something important to remember the details. Okay? Fine. We're going back to the last part where we said that Shimon says, Chayev kan v'chayev b'pikadon. That a person is going to be chayav also by Shevuot Edut and also Shevuot Pikadon. Right? But it's only going to be by Tviyat Mamon. So he comes and he says like this, Machku aleh b'marava. They start laughing at him in Eretz Yisrael. My chuka, what was so funny? Tiktani male pikadon shekel lo asa bo mushpa k'lishva mezik k'shogeg. Michti mushpa mipi atzmo be'edut l'Shimon menale. How do you know that if he's going to be mushpa mipi atzmo by edut? How does he know that you're going to be chayav? Remember, mushpa mipi atzmo means he offered it himself. So he says the Gemara mi pikadon. He learned it from pikadon. Pikadon nami mushpa mipi acherim nigmar me'edut. He says, but you learned it also from edut, which means how does Rabbi Shimon say Shevuot pikadon you're going to be chayav mushpa mipi acherim k'nishpa me'atzmo? Right? Each one you're learning from each other. How does that work? Right? So my chuka, why? Maybe Rabbi Shimon learned it from a kal v'chomer. Mipi acherim chayav mipi atzmo lo kol shken. If right now you're going to be chayav mipi acherim, so kol shken you should be chayav, it's going to be mipi atzmo. So he says, Elachuka mezid keshogeg. The laughing was on the mezid and the shogeg. Tiktani was we learned male pikadon shekel osam mushpa kinishpa mezid keshogeg. Michti mezid nami gabe edut minale. How do you know by mezid by edut? Te lo ktiv be, but it's not written v'ne'elam. Hachenami lo ktiv be ne'elam. Meaning like this. If a person came and he swore falsely by Shevuot Edut, is he chayav? Yes. Why is he chayav? It doesn't say v'ne'elam. V'ne'elam means it was concealed from you. זה היה מוסתר ממך. לא שמת לב לזה. זאת אומרת, זה היה בשוגג. Here, בגלל שלא כתוב ונעלם, אתה חייב אפילו במזיד. You're going to be חייב even במזיד in such a case. So, אמר להו רבונה, says רבונה, what's so funny about that? He says, דילמה מזיד, דלאו כשוגג בפיקדון ממעילה, ורבי שמעון גם עלה. Maybe Rabbi Shimon learned mezid by Shevuot Pikadon, you're going to be patur from a korban. Right? And he's actually learned that it's not going to be by shogeg, by gzera shava, from Milah. Right? What does that mean? By Shevuot Pikadon, it says, Nefesh ki techeta u'ma'ala ma'al ba'Hashem, v'chichesh pa'amito. That is Shevuot HaPikadon. One more time, I give you a Pikadon, I tell you, where's my Pikadon? It never happened. I make you swear. That's Nefesh ki techeta u'ma'ala ma'al ba'Hashem, v'chichesh pa'amito. But it says the words of Milah. Milah, it's written, Nefesh ki timol ma'al v'chata b'shkaga, right? Mikotche Hashem. So it's also written mi'ilah. I make a gzera shava that just like mi'ilah, you're not going to be chayav a korban only on shogeg and not b'mezid. So to shuvat pikadon is only on shogeg and not on mezid. זאת אומרת, בוא נגיד, אני שגגתי. זה יהיה שוגג. אני אומר לך, מרדכי, איפה הפלאפון שלי? אתה אומר, מה, נשבע לך. ממש, you swear. After 5 minutes, they come and they bring it out. You completely forgot that I gave it to you. That's shogeg. Yeah? So he comes and he says, you're only going to be chayav if it's going to be shogeg. That's when you're chayav shvuat pikadon. If you did it b'mezid, ata patur. And they learn that from mi'ilah. No, he doesn't bring the korban. The korban is only going to be in such a case. No, anyway, he's going to have to pay. The second that they disproved him, he has to pay a chomesh. Right? But he doesn't bring a korban. Because the korban is only going to be when it's shogeg. Ve'hainu chucha. No, זה לא קשור. זה אף פעם לא כרת. זה שבוע. So that's why he was laughing. He says that the gamar lemimilah digma lameidut. Why are you learning it from gzera shava from milah? Learn it from edut, right? And you should be b'chayev, meaning you're learning shevuot pikadon from milah to be poter b'mezid. Why don't I learn shevuot pikadon from shevuot edut lechayev b'mezid? So he says mistabra mimilah v'lemilah. It's much more mistaber to learn from milah sheken milah. It's written in the Torah mifurash milah. So I'm going to make that. So says the Gemara but the opposite. You should learn from Shevuot Edut. Because it's written techeta. Meaning you're deciding, right? There's 2 gezerot Shevuot. There's milah, and then there's techeta. You're deciding milah, Shevuot Pikadon from milah. That just like milah has to be b'shogeg and not b'mezid. So to the same thing by Shevuot Pikadon. I should learn from Shevuot Edut. Just like Shevuot Edut is also b'mezid. So to Shevuot Pikadon is b'mezid. How do you learn it from? Techeta. So says the Gemara, mistabra milah v'lemilah sheken milah bakol nehene bekavua homesh ve'asham. Yeah? How many things did I bring you here? 6, correct? Asham. 6 things. Yeah? Everyone's with me? What are the 6 things? Go to the footnote. He says milah, right? He is number 1. They both have the word milah. Bakol. Maze bakol? Nashim, anashim, krovim, mishpacha. Right? Remember, Shevuot Edut is not by krovim mishpacha v'kol הדברים האלה. בשבועות הפיקדון, yes. And milah, yes. Nehene. Maze nehene? Right? If a person is going to come and he's going to be nehene, right? By Shevuot Pikadon, he's nehene ba'avera. By milah, you're nehene ba'avera. Yeah? The next one is kavua. Maze kavua. Right? He comes and he says, right? Ekdesh and everything, you're going to be chayav korban, right? Kavua. Yeah? The next one is going to be, right? Which is the korban kavua, not the olev yored. Yeah? The next one is going to be chomesh. You have to pay a chomesh. And the last one is going to be asham. So says the Gemara Adara, but the opposite. I would have learned from Edut. Why? You have chet, hediot, right? Shevua, taveh v'kafre ve'oin. Right? How many do you have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. Right? Look in the footnote again. You have techetaz by both of them. It's both of them is hediot, adam kimoto. Right? We're not talking about milah, which is kochim basically. Shevua. Right? We're talking about that he was going to be over on a shevua because milah has nothing to do with shevua. Right? And also taveh v'kafre. And both of them has the word o, right? So therefore he says, Hanach nefishan. Here you have 6 against 5. So therefore it's much more mistaber to compare it to milah than to compare it to Shevuot Edut. Elamai chucha. So what's so funny? Kiata Rav Papa, Rav Huna v'Rav Yeshua Mibirav, Amri, they said, Hainu chucha. That's what we said about Marav. Michdi, Rabbi Shimon gzera shava gamid. Right? Rabbi Shimon, he learned it from gzera shava. Lama le depari. Why is he going to ask? Male pikadon sheken lo asam ushba knishba. Right? Umezid keshogeg. He didn't do the mushba kinishba and mezid keshogeg. So he comes and he says, "Umay chucha." What's so funny? Dilma kiparich. When was the question? He come to take him like gzera shava. Maybe it was before the gzera shava, but after he had the gzera shava, he wouldn't ask the question. So says the Gemara velo tehama lehu Rava bar iti. Right by Itai Rabbanan. Man tana Shevuot Pikadon lo nitan zedona lechapara. Who's the one that says that Shevuot Pikadon is not given the zedona lekapara at all? Right, that you don't have to do a korban. the Shitat Rabbi Shimon. Meaning Shitat Rabbi Shimon, he's the one that says that you don't do mezid keshogeg and everything because you're not doing that. So Dilma mezid keshogeg parich. Tegamal Mila. Maybe he learns it from Mila. Tahanach nefishim. Aval mushba kinishba lo parich. He didn't ask it. So he says v'tehadar edut v'tikmal lem pikadon. So then we're going to learn. That means after he already learned it from Mila, right? That basically you're going to be mechayev korban only in shogeg. Why don't you learn it again from Shevuot edut and say mezid delav keshogeg? Ma pikadon shogeg in mezid lo, so to edut. Also shogeg in mezid lo. Ki echidel of pikadon in Mila, meaning this. I learned pikadon from Mila. We already said why is it much more mistaber to learn pikadon from Mila instead of pikadon from Shevuot edut. Now that I already learned Shevuot pikadon from Mila, why don't I choser and learn Shevuot edut from Shevuot pikadon? That it should only be b'shogeg and not b'mezid. So answers the Gemara Lamed Hamud Aleph on the top. Lehachki katve rachmana leedut. That's why it's written by the edut. It's also written Shevuot Edut by Shevuot Bitui and Shevuot and Tumat Mikdash v'Kadashav Tevikulam, because by all of them, whether it's Tumat Mikdash v'Kadashav or Shevuot Bitui, it says V'Ne'elam. The Kan in Shevuot Edut, it doesn't say V'Ne'elam. So therefore, Lechayev ala mezid keshogeg. Meaning there's a special din in Shevuot Edut that even b'mezid you're going to be chayav, because it doesn't say V'Ne'elam. V'Ne'elam means it was concealed. You didn't know about it. So therefore, it has to be b'shogeg. It doesn't. It says that by Tumah Mikdash v'Kadashav. It says that by Shevuot Bitui, but it doesn't say that by Shevuot Edut. Shevuot Edut, you're going to be chayav, even if it does not say that. Have a wonderful day, everyone.